I'm your host, Patty Teal. I'm here today with Wendy Garrido. Wendy's a freedom seeker and lover of life. You'll find that out right away as I talk to her. She inspires brave, entrepreneurial spirits who are too close to burnout to slow down, listen to their inner truth, savor what makes life worth living, and trust that they are exactly what they are supposed to be. She's an Amazon #1 best-selling author who built a six-figure business with her then-husband around an upcoming sport called pickleball, and I think we've all heard of that. He's the top pickleball coach in the world, and Wendy did the marketing to get him there. She separated from him a little over 2 years ago, and she's been on a journey of self-discovery and self-recovery. She spent the first year focusing on healing her body after dealing with the stresses of having young kids, a spouse who traveled a lot, managing a team of 8, and suffering from an undiagnosed viral infection that led to autoimmune and brain issues. During this time, she also gave herself permission to explore more of her sensuality and sexuality than she ever had before. She came out as polyamorous and also ended up asking a girl out on a date for the first time ever. In the past year, she has focused on building a business, sharing her own unique talents. She is here today to talk to us about how she deals with the everyday stresses of living her truth and being in a period of so much transition in her life. Oh, I'm so glad you're here, Wendy. Thank you so much. We just recently reconnected.
Yeah, I feel really grateful and excited to be able to have this conversation with you and to kind of bring this common thread that you and I have had some degree of connection about for over 10 years now.
Boy, we sure have. So, finding your truth, so many spiritual teachers talk about finding your truth. And I was a marketing manager at a retreat center in Sedona, and one of their main messages was finding true self. But how the heck do you do it?
Well, I think there's kind of two different ways that we figure out what our truth is. And there's kind of, sometimes it's the quiet way where we're sitting in meditation and something comes to us. And then there's what feels to me like the louder way, which is that we're out engaging with people or doing things in the everyday world. And then we're finding out through our feelings what's working for us and what's not working for us.
Yeah, there's a amazing psychic in Santa Barbara. Her name is Pam Osley. And lately she's been putting these inspiring posts online. And one that really stuck with me is if you're not happy, if you're not living in your joy, you've forgotten who you are. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. But how do we remember who we are and what brings us joy? Do you think memories of what brought you happiness when you were a child is one way to do it?
I think that is one way, but I think it's also less a matter of trying to find what brings us joy and giving ourselves permission to stop doing all the things that don't bring us joy and to try new things. I lost my train of thought for a second, but
that's okay. Yeah, that's interesting because everything you say makes sense, and I'm not being a naysayer, but I have a lot of responsibility in my life, and I know you do too. And sometimes I'd rather kind of forget about that and go play and have fun, but I just don't feel like I can do that because I'm being responsible and doing what I need to do to take care of them and to bring in the money to take care of them. So how do you deal with balancing the responsibility with what brings you joy?
Well, I think that one thing that's really important to me is to acknowledge the sense of choice that we have, where a lot of times we think, oh, we have to do this because we're responsible to our kids, our family, whatever it is. And the reality is that we're choosing to do that. We could be making other decisions, and we don't want to do that right now because we don't want to deal with the consequences that might be there.
So true.
But sorry.
Yeah, that's so true.
But when we start to look at, like, why am I choosing this? And reconnecting to whether it's the care for your partner or the care for the mission and the project that you're working on, and kind of reconnecting to the fact that you do have a choice about it. There are people every day who quit their jobs, leave their relationships, don't care for their kids, find someone to love. I'm not saying you shouldn't care for your kids, but there are people who don't. Like there are choices, and we get to decide who we are and how we want to show up. And so to really connect to, why are you making the decisions that you're making? What is important to you about those things? And is it really true that you have to keep making all of those decisions? Like, what have you said yes to that you could say no to if you decided to choose differently?
You're very wise. That's a really great answer. I think that's so true, to remind ourselves, gosh, I'm not some victim that got in this situation. I might feel like it at times, but really it is all a choice, and it's the choices that we make, and we pick what's most important to us. So I think that's really, really wise.
Thank you. And I think we have, there's a culture that says that more is better, that says that being busy is good and makes you important, and that's kind of the norm. And I just don't really subscribe to that. To me, having one or two things on my calendar in a day is plenty. And a few in the week, I schedule a lot of downtime for myself when I do my best to not work when my kids are home. And there are ways to build space into our lives when that's the priority. But a lot of times we just sort of take for granted that we're going to be busy. We're going to say yes to everything we can. And we're not prioritizing our own self-care, time, and connection with the people that we love. Those are really important things.
Wow, those are really great reminders. Sometimes I put together a to-do list, which for some reason brings me some sort of satisfaction. I'm one of those people, check, I did that, check. Sometimes even after I do it, I'll write it down so I can check it off. But
Totally.
my to-do list can sometimes be overwhelming, maybe 2 pages, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So then I have to kind of prioritize and let the others go. Is that important?
Well, and also to acknowledge that you're never going to get to the end of it. Especially as an entrepreneur, every new project can create 10 more new things, and you can always go into more detail and do things more precisely. It's really a never-ending list. So to me, it's a matter of prioritizing, what really do I need to focus my attention on today? How is my body feeling? What do I feel? What am I feeling like doing today? Is today a day where I feel like resting and laying down and not exercising? Is today a day I feel like moving my body? I really try to pay attention to those things.
Yeah. Oh, that's such great. I really needed to talk to you today because for the last 2 afternoons, I actually have a job, and I took off early thinking, oh, just get all this stuff done for my own business and I'll get it done. You know what? I did nothing. I just laid around. I played with the dogs, but maybe that's what I needed to do since I couldn't really force myself to face the tasks at hand.
It's absolutely what you needed to do. And I think that we don't, whether it's the patriarchy or just the industrial culture of you're supposed to go at these times. I think there are natural rhythms to our bodies and our lives. And you think about seasons of growth in the world, the plants are not just growing all the time. They're taking time to slow down and be in the darkness of winter. And I think it's just so important to me to nourish our bodies. And I believe you can show up better when you take that downtime when you need it, and you work more efficiently when you do work. And I've also found that things just work out. Even this morning, for example, we were scheduled at a particular time. I was feeling rushed. It turned out you were feeling rushed. And I've just totally come to trust, especially when it comes to my business appointments, that if it's not in the flow on my end, that it's probably fine. And often that there's a really good reason on the other person's end also. So I reached out to you to say, I'm happy to reschedule or push it later if you needed. You told me you wanted to reschedule a half hour later, which let me get prepared better. And at exactly the time that we were going to schedule, the neighbor's weed whackers turned on and have been going for the last half hour, all the time.
That's so true. And I have to remind myself of that constantly. For some reason, my player on my new podcasting site, Hub FOR Podcasting, was just like it vanished. And I had so decided last Monday was the day I was going to do this big social media push, but I really didn't want people coming to the website with nothing there. And I had to remind myself, eventually got fixed. I had to remind myself, I have done other businesses. This is not the end of the world. Usually the things that you put these self-imposed deadlines on, there is a reason generally, and it's going to work itself out. You don't need to get in such a panic over it, Patty. Yeah, talking to myself. So,
and I've been in those situations where it feels like a gut wrenching when you realize like, oh shit, I just sent out this email and none of the links work or whatever it is. And I've just learned that I have to trust, like, okay, that's how it went out. That's how, maybe I'm not out to convince anybody that my beliefs about the universe are right, because I don't know, but I know that it's helpful for me and it helps me keep my stress levels lower, to trust that I'm doing the best I can and I'm going to honor myself, and whatever's going to happen is what's meant to happen.
Yeah, and I think, I spoke in the introduction about you've had such a transition this last year, and I think most of us don't get through life without some sort of a dark night of the soul where we're going through some really, really hard stuff. And it's hard at the time you're going through it to realize there's better days ahead. And actually, I think we live many lifetimes in our one lifetime. So you have one phase, and maybe that was your phase with your little family and your husband. Now you have your kids, but you're a single parent, and you're going into a whole new phase, whole new business. And you're going to come out stronger. I know that. But those dark nights of the soul are not so easy.
Absolutely. One of the kind of coping mechanisms I have is to sort of tell myself the turnaround story, right? So even this past Christmas, like I was in a really tough spot. I was in a tough spot financially with my relationships. And so I started writing out like what I would say 3 years from now about, it was Christmas and I wasn't sure how I was going to buy presents for my kids, and like write that story out in the past tense as it was happening. And then like 3 months later came by and I was still in a hard spot. Like it doesn't turn around overnight. And I know that from building our other business, like it took 3 years for our business to really get flowing along. And so it's hard to be patient, I think. And the part of why I think I have prioritized my life the way that I have is because ever since I was 16, every 2 to 3 years, either someone I knew or someone close to someone I knew has passed away.
Oh.
And so it's like it hasn't been an immediate member of my family, but it was someone close enough to remind me that we can't just assume that we get next year or the next 20 years or necessarily even next week.
Yeah, that's so true, and such a good thing to remember. We talk about all kinds of burnout, and generally you hear a lot about caregiver burnout, caring for someone, and basically losing yourself, and even compassion fatigue, where you can't be as compassionate as is your true nature. And you're talking about another form of burnout. It may be very similar, entrepreneurship or business burnout. How common is it? What can we do? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think there's entrepreneurial burnout. There's also mommy burnout, I think. And when you're an entrepreneur and a mom, I think that it's a lot all together. But what I'm really excited about supporting people with is this growing wave of people who have built a business around their passions and around what they love and are still feeling burnt out. And that's the situation that I was in with my ex. Like, we were doing what we loved, we were making good money doing it, and we were still maxed out.
Right, and I know your health suffered as well, and that's another thing. Autoimmune disorders are so commonplace. You hear about young people like yourself all the time. It used to be rare you'd hear of someone who had lupus or rheumatoid arthritis or any of the MS number of autoimmune disorders, but now it seems like every day I talk to someone, and oftentimes they're very young, who are suffering from autoimmune disorders. And I'm sure some of it is due to environmental toxins, but I think it's also due to this type of stress that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think I mean, there's so many factors. I know it was mono that I got when the virus that I had, and I didn't know that it's not just like, oh, you sleep for 3 weeks like kids do in college and then you're over it. Like, it can drag on, and then it can create this cascade of other effects. So as a result, I've had to get much more strict about what I'm eating. Like, I went off of wheat and went off of dairy and went off of sugar for a long time. And I can feel the impact on my body as soon as I do, like with fatigue and brain fog. And but I think that the advantage of it is that I've learned to be much more in tune with my body. Like, there's just this way that I can now identify this like tension that I kind of carry in my neck and my shoulders. And to me, it's like the mom tension stress of like, I've got kids over here asking for this. I've got a kid over here asking for this. Like, I need to go to the bathroom and I haven't been able to go to the bathroom. And it's just like this stress mode that I didn't know that I was living in for 2.5 years solid. And now I can recognize when I'm feeling that in myself and be like, okay, what do I need to change about the circumstances right now? Or if I can't change the circumstances, how can I change my internal experience? Like, how can I calm myself down or whatever to release that tension? Because I do believe that, and I think there's growing research that's showing that when we carry that sort of stress and tension, like, our bodies are made to do that, you know, when there's the tiger chasing us or whatever the metaphor is, but not to do that every day, day in and day out, year after year.
I think that's a great explanation. So are you turning this passion for finding your truth, speaking your truth, finding a business that nurtures you and not letting it burn you out? Are you yourself turning that into a business?
Yeah, I work with people I'm really good at coming up with the practical strategies. And also I kind of have the intuitive sense to be like asking people questions like, well, why do you think that? Like, what is that assumption? And sometimes it's really easy for me to see someone be taught. To me, it's as if they're like, well, I've got these two options. The one, I could go and swim with dolphins. Or the other, I could go, work for a garbage truck. And of course, they're not talking about those things, but the energy behind them to me is crystal clear. I'm like, why are you even talking about this thing over here? Like, clearly you're not excited about it. And then they'll say, oh yeah, I guess I'm not. I think, my mom suggested that, or I'm telling myself I should, or whatever their story is. So I think I have a talent for helping people kind of zero in on what does feel alive and exciting to them right now. And then when it comes to business, I love helping people figure out like, okay, well, what have you built in your business so far? Where are you excited about going next? And how can we pivot, or what new offering can we create? Like, what's the next step? Because I really like to get into like, what's the practical next step that you can do today or this week or this month to start to create that change in your business?
Oh, that's so helpful and so important. And if someone was interested in contacting you, how would they do that, Wendy?
Well, I love supporting people who are entrepreneurs who are trying to make a living or are making a great living doing what they love. And so my URL is wendylovesme.com. So you can just remember that I do love and want to support you. And go to wendylovesme.com, and that's where you can either sign up for a conversation to get on the phone with me and talk more about what it might look like for us to work together, or you can also sign up for my email list there, or my Live Your Truth manifesto that I've created.
Well, I'm going to definitely go there and sign up for your manifesto, or anyway, I'm going to stay in contact with you because I think I could use your help. It's kind of overwhelming whether you're 20 or you're 50 or you're 60 and you're starting a business, just getting going. I think your support would be so invaluable.
Well, thanks. And a lot of it is just, with me or without me, is giving yourself permission to slow down.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that great reminder. I really, really appreciate it. Anyway, I
Mhm.
hope that you'll be a guest again
I
soon,
would
but
love
we've
to.
loved having you today. Thank
Well,
you, Wendy.
thanks, Patty. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.